Hi everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial art channel. Hope everyone's still remaining healthy and staying to a social distance. And I gotta say, it's been over 3 months. I haven't really left the house other than the necessity, right, of going to buy groceries. And I know that for some people, this is actually becoming quite difficult if you don't, leave the house. Each day start to blend together, almost like one of those movies where where the character is trapped in the same day, in a loop of the same day over and over and over, and that tend to drive some people insane, right? Personally, I don't have such a huge issue with it because even without this pandemic, my schedule, other than going out to teach classes or to to meet clients, to do work, my schedule has always been wake up, do training, and then the regular. So for me, this isn't a huge impact, at least not on my mental side of things. But I know this must be very difficult for some of you. So I would suggest you've tried to find an anchor point, like something that you can focus on to do, and so that will take your mind away from the fact that you were living in the house for a few months without ever going out, and maybe do some training if you into whatever exercise you do, and track your own progress. Maybe play some online game to replace physical socializing. Read book is also a great way to pass time. Watch movies, series. But yeah, you gotta do something to keep yourself occupied so that this lockdown don't drive you crazy. Anyway, so today, as promised, we're gonna start to take a look at one of my two grandmasters on the 6th episode of my Fact or Fiction video series. Now I have two Taichi grandmaster who my own Taichi master learned. He learned from both of them. Right, we're gonna talk about one of them today, another one either next week or the week after. And like I've said before, I'm quite critical when it comes to fact or fiction, and I don't only criticize other lineages, right? When it comes to my own lineage and my own grandmaster, or even my own master, but he's not really relevant. He doesn't really make any claims. But for my own grandmasters, I'll also be as critical as I can, right? I'm not gonna pull any punches or try to be biased towards them. So that in the future, when I go really hard on other people, you can understand that I'm not trying to get a personal attack on them. This is just the way I make these videos. So today we're gonna talk about one of my Taichi grandmaster called Wu TuNan. Let me just write him on the board here. So his name is Wu TuNan. Right, he's quite a influential Wu family Taichi practitioner, right? From after the People's Republic of China has formed up until he passed away, which is around 1989. So between those times, he's one of the most influential Wu family Taichi practitioner in Beijing. Okay, I mean, not the only one. There are others, but he's one of them. And I don't know how well you guys knows him, because I don't know if he's actually well known overseas, since he kind of passed away before martial art become big overseas, especially Tai Chi, and I don't think much of the disciples actually went abroad. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. But yeah, but today we're gonna definitely go through him. So a lot of the things that I'm gonna talk about today might not be something that you already know of or have heard of, right? The rumors and myths that I'm gonna discuss and dispel. But I hope it will still be interesting nonetheless. Now, besides being one of the most influential Wu-style Taichi figure in Beijing, he's also one of the most controversial Taichi figure in recent history, right? The main reason for that is actually because of his age. Now, according to himself, he was born 1884. So that, according to himself, he's born 1884, and he passed away 1989, and that would make his age 105, which is very, very impressive, right? For someone who for anyone who does Tai Chi and promotes the idea of longevity, and he has been seen as the a shining example of how Tai Chi can give you longevity, right? Because he lived past 100, which is quite a difficult thing for people to achieve. However, there are recent materials that expose this is a false birth date. Okay, now the reason people are able to prove that he falsified his birthday is from this picture you can see here, which is a certificate that Wu TuNan got when he attended the Nanjing Guoshu Academy's national Chinese martial art examination. Okay, according to the certificate, the examination, as we all know, and it says here, it happens on 1928, and on the certificate also stated that his age is 26 years old. Okay, and that would then put his actual birthday (1902). And if that is the case, then his actual age when he passed away is only 87. Now, personally, I think this is still quite an impressive age. Especially if you look at his videos around just before he passed away, he's still quite healthy and move about and can still do Taichi. So he's definitely still a very healthy person. But of course, to the commoners, the difference between 87 to 105 is quite huge, right? The one is almost like a legendary longevity. This is just slightly better than average. But I still think living up to 87 and still being healthy and able to move is quite an achievement. My own grandfather, for example, he died around the age of 100. But ever since like 80 something, he hardly can move, and he doesn't even get out of the apartment. He live on the 4th level, right? So he doesn't even go out anymore because he had to get an elevator and then climb some stairs, and he fell once. After that, he stopped going out. So even though he lived up to 100, but the quality of living, in my opinion, is actually pretty bad. You can only sit on your armchair at your apartment and get fed food. Whereas Wu TuNan was actually actively moving about, going to the park, doing exercises. So his quality of life is a lot better than my own grandfather. Even though my own grandfather, technically lived longer than him, if this birthday is to be believed. So I don't think this actually takes too much away from, his credit towards Taichi's benefit to longevity and health. Just living long is not enough, right? You have to live healthy with good quality of life, which means your body must be able to do the stuff you want to do. If you just lie in bed and you can live to 200, but it will be boring. So I think for people who want to discuss about health and longevity, they need to understand that it's not just how many years you can live up to, it's also how the quality of life you are when you reach that high age. Anyway, so obviously with this new given evidence, I would have to agree that he most likely forged his birthday, right? He wasn't born on 1884 but rather 1902. And if this is the case, and this is why he's such a figure of controversy, then a lot of stuff he claimed cannot be true. For example, he claimed that he first met with Wu Quanyu, and Wu Quanyu introduced him to Wu Jianquan, his son, and he studied under Wu Jianquan. He's one of the first students to study under Wu Jianquan. Obviously, this will be false because we all know that there are people who went to Wu Jianquan before he could, right? If he was born 1902, then he need to at least be 9 years old according to himself, or maybe 12, or maybe a bit older, before he can actually go and learn from someone, right? You can't learn from someone when you're just born or when you're 5 years old. And that would then put a lot of other, members of the Wu Jianquan students earlier than him. So his claim of being one of the first students there would not be true. Now, his other claim is that he's the one who first met with Song Shuming. Okay, for those of you that don't know, Song Shuming is a mystical figure that we talked about during our Origin of Taichi video series, right? Not mystical, I mean, maybe he exists, maybe he doesn't, we don't actually know, but he supposedly has a Song family Taichi manuscript that he passed on to the Wu family. So according to Wu TuNan, he's the one who actually first contacted Song Shuming. And after that, he supposedly have another manuscript from someone else some other friend gave it to him, and he compared it with Song Shuming's manuscript, and they are almost identical. And that's how the Wu family eventually, come in contact with Song Shuming and learns, the Song style's manuscript. But obviously, the Wu family themselves denies this, right? They say that Wu Jianquan was the one that got in contact with Song Shuming. Wu TuNan says that he is the one who did that. And in the Wu TuNan lineage of Taichi, they do value this Song style manuscript heavily, right? It's something that he really prayed to be one of the center manuscript of the Wu TuNan lineage. So he certainly definitely placed a lot of emphasis on this manuscript. Now, obviously, again, based on this new birth date, this whole claim would not be possible because he would simply be too young at the time to have a friend give him a manuscript and go to Song Shuming and and basically do whatever he claimed to have done. The obvious other thing that then wouldn't happen is that he claimed that after studying from Wu Jianquan for I think 9 years, he was then introduced by Wu Jianquan to Yang Shaohou, right? The elder brother of Yang Chengfu, right? We talked about this in the previous episode as well. The third generation Yang family member who actually can fight. So Wu TuNan said that Wu Jianquan introduced him to Yang Shaohou, and he learned Yang style from Yang Shaohou as well. So this also could not have happened if he was born 1902, because then he would simply be too young. Even if he did study from Wu Jianquan at the age of 9, and then he learned for 9 years, then the time wouldn't add up for when Yang Shaohou was still in Beijing. So a lot of things he claimed would not have worked if his birthday is 1902 and not 1884. So this is why he's such a figure of controversy within the Beijing Taichi community, right? A lot of people kind of discredit him because of this. Now, given this Nanjing Guoshu Academy certificate, I would have to agree that most likely his date is incorrect. However, I do have this one minor issue with it, is that where did this Nanjing Guoshu Academy certificate came from, right? Because logically speaking, the certificate must have been given to Wu TuNan himself. And if he were to plan on forging his birth date and making a false claim on all the things that we talk about just now, it would be logical for him to either hide the certificate or burn the certificate, or at the very least not show to anyone, right? So how does this picture actually came out? That is the part that doesn't make sense. I'm not saying that he did not forge his birthday, right? Because evidence at the moment does suggest that he most likely did. But I do have a minor doubt on where this evidence came about, and I cannot find any info on where they got hold of this certificate. And of course, there's also a very minor possibility that the organization that handled the certificate, Nanjing Guoshu Academy, got his age wrong, right? That could also happen. Maybe he wasn't 26 at the time. We don't really know. But I'm not arguing against the fact that he altered his birthday. It's just that this evidence does have some minor issues that I can't trust fully. But I'm told those things can be disproven. We're gonna go with he most likely was born 1902. So this I really don't think is a huge issue. But for some people who dislike him, this is like a major point they want to attack on. Right? I don't think this really affects his martial art per se. It only affects the claim and maybe his character, right? Maybe he's not a very honest person. But what is important, right? We need to be able to know if one of these, famous names in the martial community is honest or is lying. So that is important in a way. But personally, from my own perspective, right, from my own training lineage-wise, even if he did fake his age and made those false claims, it doesn't really affect me that much. So I am willing to admit if this is the truth, right? So I'm not trying to disprove this evidence, other than those two minor details that I don't really understand. But I don't think this really affects it very much for me personally. So for those of you who, especially who don't like him, then we can accept that he was born in 1902 and he fabricated his birthday for whatever personal reason he has, and it means that his character is not a very trustworthy person. All right, now that we got that out of the way, we're gonna then talk about the next thing that I think most people are interested in, is that can Wu TuNan fight? And the simple answer is no, I do not think he can fight. Now this might upset some of the Wu TuNan lineage people, right? Who's making who's teaching by using his name, his fame, and his reputation. Right? Those people might be offended, but I can say with almost certainty that Wu TuNan cannot fight because he actually never fought. All right. The logical thing here is that if you have never fought in your life, or at least you never fought constantly, there's no way for you to learn how to fight. It's just like if you never jump in the pool to swim, you cannot learn how to swim, right? Learning all the theory on swimming without jumping into the pool or into a body of water will never actually teach you what it feels like to be actually in the water and swimming. And as far as I know, Wu TuNan have never actually fought in his life. And I can say this with almost certainty because that is what my master told me. And yeah, and obviously I think my master is trustworthy on this scenario because it doesn't actually make him look good that one of his master can't fight, right? So the fact that he's willing to admit that would mean that this is more likely to be the truth than those others from Wu TuNan lineage who claim he can fight, especially when there's no record of him fighting. And my master says that Wu TuNan was such a careful person, right? He actually believes that the essence of Taichi, right, this internal power, whatever you want to call it, is actually the living essence of our body. So whatever you can call qi, in our language we call it the bone force or whatever. Or there's the different layers of force, right? There's the bone tendon force, there's the skin flesh force, and there's like the third force. We're not going to go into detail of that, but basically Wu TuNan believes that these forces that Taichi used to send people out or to hit people are also the living essence of our self. So by spending it a lot, by hitting people, you are depleting your own life essence, and therefore he does not like doing that, right? He wants to live long. His whole life goal is to reach longevity, to protect his own longevity. So he doesn't actually like to expend his essence, shall we call it. And that is why he never actually go into conflict with anyone. Okay, so my master studied with him, I think, from either the late 60s or the early 70s, all the way up to about 1979. And during that period, okay, my master has said that he's never ever seen Wu TuNan, right? What we call my master called him Wu Lao. It's like a respective title. So he said he never seen Wu Lao ever get into a conflict with anyone. If people bully him or try to verbally abuse him, he just laughs and he walks away. He never ever get into a conflict. So a person like that, obviously he never actually fights, right? Because he doesn't even get into verbal conflict. And if he doesn't get into verbal conflict and he never fight, how can he know how to fight? So that's why I believe that he most likely never fought and does not know how to fight. And he has his own reasons for it. Now, just on a side note, for those of you who might be thinking, I don't fully agree with his understanding, right? That if you send force and send people flying or hit people, you're gonna like take it out of your own lifespan. Obviously, if you excessively do anything physically and create massive strain, it will affect your own lifespan. For example, if you stay awake all the time and don't sleep enough, if you don't rest and just keep doing exercises, all of those things can affect your own lifespan. So it's not really a matter of just Taichi doing that. If you do incorrect ratio between exercising and resting for any exercise, it will affect your lifespan. And furthermore, as we all know, Yang Luchan, right, who beat up a lot of people when he went to Beijing and became the undefeated Yang, or invincible Yang, like people like to call him. He died either at the age of 73 or 78, right? The mixed conflicting record on that. And either way, I think that's still a reasonably good age given the medical condition of his time, right? Passing 70 is is not bad. It's actually pretty good already. So, and he is someone who actually he issued force a lot. And Yang Shaohou, right, who committed suicide at the age of 67, he was still going quite strong. If he didn't have to commit suicide. And I believe Yang Jianhua, I don't remember exactly how long he lived for, but it's definitely beyond 70 as well. And Yang Chengfu is the one who actually never fight, and he actually died at the age of 53. So you can see issuing force and fighting doesn't have a direct relation to how long you will live, right? Like I think I've said before in another video, your longevity first is determined by your gene, right? Your genetic making, and then determined by your lifestyle, your living environment, all of these things. Martial art is probably one of the least influential force in the equation of longevity. So I don't personally agree with Wu TuNan's belief, but I do respect that he cared for his own health so much that he did not wish to issue force. And as a result, this also lead to him being quite a slippery person, as we might call it. What happened is, for example, there was one time where someone from outside, not his own student, right? Someone from outside came to him, was quite respectful, and asked him to critique his Taichi, and he showed him a danbian single whip. And Wu TuNan said, "Oh, your danbian is very good. You just keep doing that. It's very good." And after that guy left, someone from his student asked Wu Lao, say, but Wu Lao, why do you say that guy's good? He made all this mistake, right? This is wrong, that's wrong. He listed a lot of mistakes. And Wu Lao say, yeah, well, because he's not my student. I don't really care what he does. So he's kind of like a slippery person. He doesn't want to tell outsiders what they're doing wrong. And that kind of, also make the general public of martial art community in Beijing at the time think that he doesn't have an opinion, right? They think that he actually doesn't have any skill because he thinks everyone is good. But he actually doesn't think everyone is good. He's pretend to do that to avoid any conflict. And if anyone who comes to challenge him, whether it's fighting or push him, you always just say, you are better. I don't have to. You don't have to challenge. If you want to challenge me, then you're automatically better. And because of this, a lot of people start to look down on him and think, he's a coward and easily to be bullied. But like I explained, he has his reasons. Okay, it's not. Maybe he's scared. Maybe he's not. We don't know. But according to my master, his reason that he thinks that he doesn't want to spend the force or the chi, the energy that he spent his whole life gathering and collecting. He believes that's really bad for his health, so he doesn't want to do that and get into conflict. Now, as to how good he is, obviously I've never met him myself, so I can't give you a first-hand account, but according to my master who trained under him, my master actually have very high praise for him. Obviously he can't fight, but my master said that his push-hand skill is very, very high level. Now this is quite abstract for people who have never done Taichi or push-hand, right? But basically the way my master describes it is that there are certain levels where someone can send a guy out falling or flying during push hand, and a master can sense that force coming, but it's too late to stop it. A level higher than that basically is what he called Wu TuNan's Taichi. Is basically he can send someone off balance or flying without them physically detecting the incoming force before it happens. So it's almost like you can't feel anything. The next moment you're off balance, and then you realize you've been hit with a force. This is probably going to sound very abstract for those of you who don't practice Tai Chi, but this isn't a practical video. It's just there to kind of give you a gauge on how my master ranked Wu TuNan's Tai Chi. So he actually thinks his Tai Chi, is at least the push hand and the mechanic side of it is actually very high level. In fact, he thinks that Wu TuNan's Tai Chi was higher than his other master, Shiming, right? Grandmaster Shiming, which we're going to discuss in a later episode. He said that at the time so in the 1980s, at that time, Wu TuNan's Tai Chi is actually a lot better than Grandmaster Shiming. Shiming only reached Wu TuNan's state of ability and understanding in around 1997. Okay, so that is almost basically at least 10 to 12 years before Wu TuNan. Obviously, Wu TuNan might have reached this level even in the 70s. We don't know exactly. But he's basically ahead of Shiming in his Taichi training. Now, this will bring us to the next rumor that's very popular among Beijing and Chinese Taichi community. Okay, which is that because Wu TuNan had a lot of disciples, four of them from Yang Jiacang, Huang Zhenhuan, Zhang Guojian, and Zhang Zichen. Right, these four. Zhang Zichen is my own Taichi master. So these four, around 1978 or 79, around that time, they left Wu TuNan's Taichi group, which is stationed in Beijing, opposite the Beijing Zoo at the Beijing Planetarium. Okay, so those four people, Yang Jiacang, Huang Zhenhuan, Zhang Guojian, Zhang Zichen, they left Wu TuNan and joined Shiming's Taichi group. And at the time, Shiming first started teaching in public. Well, he first started teaching, actually, he never taught in private in any way. So he first started teaching in Pearl Bamboo Park, which is about 15-minute walk in walking distance from the planetarium. So these four people, who are basically the students of Wu TuNan, they decided to go to Shiming's side, and eventually they decided to join Shiming's Taichi group and study under Shiming, and eventually, I think in the early 80s, they became Shiming's official indoor disciples. I think Yang Jiacang still kept connection with Wu TuNan. He still goes back from time to time, but the rest stayed with Shiming and didn't go back to Wu TuNan. Now, for this incident, now the people have been creating rumors saying that Shiming first came to the planetarium and challenged Wu TuNan in a push hand, and Wu TuNan lost, and that's why those students went with Shiming to the Pearl Bamboo Park. Now, I've talked to my own master about this, and I've also heard from Huang Zhenhuan, who made a public statement during one of the Baishi ceremonies that my master held. Both of them claim that this event never happened. Shiming never went to the planetarium, he never challenged Wu TuNan. Of course, by what I just been saying earlier, Wu TuNan would have refused anyway, so it could not have happened. Now, the reason these four students from Wu TuNan went to Shiming is actually because they feel that Wu TuNan does not actually teach properly. What this means is Wu TuNan is always teaching, but he never teach properly. So he will teach something here today, he'll teach something there the next day, and it's not related. He never teach you how to put everything together in a step-by-step progression. Like he's giving you random pieces of parts that meant to be put together into a machine, but never shows you how to put it into an actual functioning machine exactly. Okay, so they spent many years at Wu TuNan, and eventually they felt quite frustrated, and then they're not progressing anywhere, not getting anywhere. And when they went to Shiming, Shiming's explanation was much more clearer and understandable. And after going there for years, they've all had massive progression, and that's when they decided that they're not going to go back to Wu TuNan, even though at the time Wu TuNan, according to my own master, is actually at a more advanced level than Shiming, but they felt that they can actually progress more with Shiming than Wu TuNan. So this brings us to the next point that is quite controversial and probably going to piss off a lot of the Wu TuNan's lineage people, right? Is that according to my own master, Wu TuNan never taught properly to anyone, right? None of his disciples or students has ever gotten the full knowledge from him. Exactly why he does this, I've asked my master before, and I've also spoken to the others, and none of them actually know. They just say that Wu TuNan is very secretive. He holds his knowledge. He treasures his knowledge too much to share it with anyone, not even his own students. Some of them actually pays him, and he makes not his full living expense, but he at least get part of his living expense from his student. Even then, he does not actually want to teach him. Now, I know that this is going to contradict some other people's claim, especially someone, for example, Ma Youqing, right? He's one of his most famous student or disciple. I'm not sure actually if he's a real disciple or if he's just a student. He said he's a disciple, right? But I can't confirm that. Ma Youqing basically was from Beijing, studied with him for many years, and then went to Hong Kong, wrote books and become famous and had a lot of disciples. So obviously, according to him, Wu TuNan passed him the full knowledge. Naturally, that's what everyone says. But according to my own master, Wu TuNan never passed the full knowledge to anyone. So I tend to believe my own master's claim, not because because he's my own master, not because of that, but because saying that doesn't make my master look good, right? And also my master doesn't stand to gain anything by lying about this. But for those of you who, for those of the people who actually, feed on the reputation of Wu TuNan, right? It kind of, they stand to gain if they say they receive all the teachings, and they stand to lose if they admit that Wu TuNan never taught them everything or the complete knowledge. So based on this logic, that's why I believe my own master's words are probably more true, because it doesn't give any benefit for lying, essentially, right? And someone might argue, maybe Wu TuNan kept the secret to my own master, to Zhang Guojian, to Yang Jiacang, and to Huang Zhenhuan, but then he secretly taught, Ma Youqing or some other people. It could be possible, but do keep in mind that Yang Jiacang and Zhang Guojian was also two of the favorite students from Wu TuNan, right? When Wu TuNan was still alive, he actually told Yang Jiacang and Zhang Guojian that they should form a Wu-style organization from Wu TuNan's side, and pass on the organizations, the lineage. So from that you can see that Wu TuNan actually does value at least Yang Jiacang and Zhang Guojian, right? Maybe not my own master, because I think he was there he was very late. He wasn't one of the earlier students, so maybe he didn't treasure or value my own master that much, but he definitely value Yang Jiacang and Zhang Guojian. However, all four of them went to Shiming together, right? And I still see Zhang Guojian every year. I want to go back to China and train at the Purple Bamboo Park. So for those of you who don't believe it, you can verify with him as well. So all of them, so whether it's Zhang Guojian, my own master, or even Huang Zhenhuan, all of them claim that Wu TuNan never taught any of the disciples the full thing, and never taught them how to put the pieces together. And obviously Yang Jiacang passed away quite a while back, so you can't really get any confirmation from him. And as a result, when people start trash talking about Wu TuNan in more recent era, after he passed away, none of his disciples actually wants to stand up and and defend Wu TuNan's honor, because a lot of them actually felt like they've been cheated. Obviously, they're not going to admit this in the open, because a lot of them are still profiting from his organization, right? For example, Zhu Datong. I'm not saying Zhu Datong is bad, but just example, he's still profiting from teaching Wu TuNan style of Taichi. So even if Wu TuNan didn't teach him everything or the complete system, he's not going to admit it. And just to put things in perspective, my master has been the vice chairman of the Wu TuNan Taichi Association in Beijing for a couple of years. I think he resigned from the post a couple of years ago, but he was at least doing that. He was the vice chairman for that organization for quite some time. So he's not like being excluded from the Wu TuNan Association. Whenever they have gathering for Wu TuNan celebration or other events that involves that group, they still always invite my master to go. And master actually doesn't like socializing with them. So sometimes they even ask people to park the car outside Purple Bamboo Parks, to insist that my master go with them. So it's not. So I'm saying this to show you that my master isn't outcasted by the group. Even though these four left from Wu TuNan and went to Shiming, the rest of the people still want them to be part of the Wu TuNan Taichi Association, right? So they're not saying these things out of spite, and they're still actively involved. Although my master don't really want to, he's not a very sociable person, but he was still being involved in this whole thing. So he's not saying this out of spite. It's just simply the way it's the truth that he perceives. And I tend to believe it because, none of Wu TuNan's students was actually famous for much, right? With his push hand or striking hand or sparring, they are not. I can't see any physical ability, and now that Ma Youqing and some of the others have passed away, this has pretty much become something that we cannot verify anymore. I mean, we can check out the grand student like Ma Youqing's disciple and stuff, but from what I can see, they have nothing impressive in my opinion. Okay, next we're gonna look at a few popular myths regarding Wu TuNan, right? So the first one is that he went with Wu Jianquan to the 1930s, what do you call it? The Hangzhou Leitai tournament, right? The first national combat tournament that happened after Republic era was formed. So there's a popular myth that one of the Wu stylists during the competition trash talked one of the competitors, which I think is Zhu Guolu, saying that who eventually became second place winner of the overall competition, right? He tried talking him by saying that what he's displaying on the competition field is not Chinese martial art, and this then angered Zhu Guolu and his brother Zhu Guofu, and they both challenged this accuser and say, "What, you come on stage and we have a goal, and I will use only Chinese martial art techniques," and that person basically refused to come on stage. A lot of people in modern day say that is Wu TuNan, right? Because he's known for turning down duels and being quite a coward when it comes to conflict. But obviously, if we were to believe this, date of birth, then at that time he's not qualified to be in the judge panel, right? This is one of the Wu stylists who's in the judge panel that makes this accusation. If you're not in the judge panel, you don't have the right to make such accusations. Which means it had to be Wu Jianquan, okay? And I think the reason people try to shift him to Wu TuNan is, first of all, because he's known for being a coward when it comes to conflict. Also because it kind of, it makes the whole style looks bad if Wu Quanyu was the one being confronted and he's too chicken to step up to the challenge. So it's better to shift the blame to Wu TuNan. But, based on this age and styles, you can also check the judge panel record of the Leitai tournament, and we can see that Wu Jianquan was part of it, Wu TuNan was not. He's not important enough to be a judge at the time. So that rumor actually most likely happened with Wu Jianquan and not Wu TuNan. Okay, another common myth in Beijing is that when Chen Fake came to Beijing, Wu TuNan claimed that what he does is not Taichi. This part is most certainly true, and they had this gathering of all the Taichi heads in Beijing, and Chen Fake was there too. During this gathering, Wu TuNan said that what is he doing here? What he does is not Taichi. He shouldn't be part of this gathering or this discussion. The false rumor is that he actually challenged Chen Fake, and Chen Fake did not step up to the challenge. That's completely false, right? He did not challenge Chen Fake. As we know, he does not challenge anyone. That's just not the way he is. However, he did call out and say that Chen Fake should be removed from the discussion panel and should only be there as an observer. He can observe the discussion, but he has no right to participate. This is most likely true. He does have a very low opinion of the Chen village style. Not that it's ineffective or it's not good in pushing or fighting. He just simply thinks that it is not Taichi. Okay, another controversy that involving Wu TuNan we've hinted on earlier is that he, towards after the age of 50, right, 50 to 60, I don't know exact age, he started to claim that he also learned from Yang Shaohou, right, the third generation Yang family member, and he learned the Yang Shaohou's frame, which is a smaller and faster frame. And obviously, people also say that he made that up because of the age. That is the one thing. The other thing is that people say that frame don't look very different from the Wu style's fast frame, so they can't be a Yang Shaohou frame. The problem with this argument is that we have to remember that before Wu Jianquan and Yang Chengfu, there was no differentiation of Wu style Taichi or Yang family Taichi. There was just Taichi. And quite interestingly, whenever someone asks Wu TuNan what style of Taichi he teach, he also just said that he teaches Taichi. And same with my own master, right? When people come to ask my own master what style of Taichi he teach, my master say he just teach Taichi. There's only Taichi and there's not Taichi. There's no such thing as Yang style, Wu style, or whatever style. If you adhere to the Taichi principles, the 10 principles, the Taichi classic, then you're doing Taichi. If not, you're not doing Taichi. So that's Wu TuNan's personal opinion on Taichi. So he actually doesn't believe in Wu style or Yang style. And this wasn't a thing until Wu Jianquan and Yang Chengfu started teaching, and they needed to separate themselves with different branding, so to speak. So what that means is that initially, right, at least from Yang Wu Quanyou and Yang Banhou, Yang Jianhou's era, they should be doing essentially the same form. And then later on, as they pass down in separate lineages, the Wu family form start to change a bit, the Yang family form start to change to something else. And now if you compare them, they kind of look very different. For example, the Wu style famous for the body that leans forward, they call it 举中求直, and 川字步, right, the Chuan character stepping, where the Yang family doesn't have that, for example. But we can be pretty certain that this does not happen on the second generation of Yang family. It most likely happened after Wu Jian. We don't even know if it happened during Wu Jianquan's period. Maybe it happens afterwards. So Yang Shaohou's frame shouldn't be much different from the Wu family's fast frame at that period, okay? So the fact that Wu TuNan's fast frame looks like the Wu family fast frame, it doesn't mean that it can't be Yang Shaohou's frame. So that is a poor argument. However, obviously, maybe due to his age, he might not be able to have met with Yang Shaohou and learn from him while he was in Beijing. Or maybe he's too young for Yang Shaohou to take him seriously. However, Wu TuNan did mention other names who also was training under Yang Shaohou at the time. Unfortunately, those names I cannot verify with them anymore. There's not much record on them, and I don't think none of them is alive anymore. But but according to his claim, the other people I think there were either 5 or 7 of them in total who was learning under Yang Shaohou. And Yang Shaohou did indeed teach in Beijing. He never took any disciple, but he had students who eventually can't stand off his harsh method of teaching. So it doesn't sound like Wu TuNan just made everything up. It could be, but he does have some details to it that sounds like it did happen. I can't really pass judgment on that. I don't know enough. There's no way to verify it. I just have to point out that the fact that his small frame or fast frame, not small frame, fast frame, looks similar to the Wu family fast frame doesn't mean it can't come from Yang Shaohou, right? That's what I'm gonna say for this topic. And now the reason he started promoting this Yang Shaohou frame, right? Why he didn't say it earlier? Why he say it in the later part of his life? Is most likely due to a fallout he has with Wu family. Now he was very close to Wu Jianquan, right? In fact, his original surname is not Wu, he's Mongolian, so he has like a Mongolian surname. He changed it to Wu because he wanted to be part of the Wu family, so to speak. He's very close to Wu Jianquan, and that's why he also wanted to have the same surname as his master. So why is it that later on in his life he suddenly says that Yang Shaohou is his master and started to kind of to distance himself from the Wu family? It's actually due to a fallout, but this fallout did not happen with Wu Jianquan. Okay, basically Wu Jianquan at some point went south, and his whole family, immediate family went south with him, right? I mean, for example, his son Wu Gongyi eventually went to Hong Kong and started teaching there. I believe the Wu family is still in Hong Kong to this day. And Wu TuNan doesn't have an issue with Wang Maozhai, right, who is basically the elder Taichi brother of Wu Jianquan, who stayed in Beijing. So Wu TuNan didn't have a problem with Wang Maozhai. He didn't have a problem with Yang Yuting, who is Wang Maozhai's disciple. He didn't have a problem with Wang Peisheng, who is Yang Yuting's disciple. He didn't have actually any problem with that branch. He had a problem with Ma Yueliang, who's from Shanghai. And Ma Yueliang basically married Wu Jianquan's daughter, and so became an indirect member of the Wu family. Exactly what the fallout is about, I don't really know. There are rumors around, but I don't really want to repeat them because none of them have any substance to it. I've asked my own master. My own master doesn't like gossip and rumors, so he doesn't actually want to say anything. So what we do know is that Wu TuNan has a fallout with Ma Yueliang. Right? Some claim that they made up. Wu TuNan lost to Ma Yueliang in Pushan. It's a typical stuff that people make up. Obviously, like we know, Wu TuNan doesn't do Pushan with outsiders. He doesn't touch hand with outsiders. So that claim is most likely false. But they did hate each other to some extent, which is why in the modern day, Ma Yueliang's the student and disciples and grand disciple are the main source of attack against Wu TuNan. If you go onto the Chinese internet and you search for all the bad things people say about Wu TuNan, most of them come from I think it's called Yan Ziyuan. He's like a dude in New Zealand who studied under Ma Yueliang, and other members of the Ma Yueliang lineage of Wu style. They really hate him, and they the main sources of all the criticisms and attacks on Wu TuNan's reputation. And this is most likely why, to later on part of his life, he decided to promote Yang Shaohou as his master, and rather than Wu Jianquan. I know it's not a very good thing. I probably would not agree to something like this, but I have to say he does have his reasons, because Ma Yueliang is basically the son-in-law of the Wu family. So either, no matter how you slice it, he's closer to the family than Wu TuNan. So it's kind of forced Wu TuNan to be distanced out, which is why in today's Beijing martial art circle, Wu TuNan has his disciple has his own organization called Wu TuNan Taichi organization, right? They're not part of the main Wu family organization that's run by other people. So he sort of distanced himself out from the main group. But obviously, like I said in my previous episodes, this drama doesn't actually affect skill. I'm personally more interested, and I would also recommend you guys to be more focused on what skill you can attain, rather than whose friend was who and whose enemy was who. Obviously, we are doing fact or fiction video because of lockdown and everything, so we had to talk about these dramas and rumors and controversies. But personally, I don't think this plays a huge part in our training life, and it shouldn't be the source of your focus, right? You should spend more time trying to understand how to train better, how to improve yourself, how to progress, than on these dramas. So for example, one of the main voice or advocate that is criticizing Wu TuNan on the internet these days, as well as in Chinese martial art magazines such as Wudang and other publications, one of the most prominent voice that criticizes Wu TuNan from the Shanghai Ma Yueliang lineage is a guy called Yan Ziyuan from New Zealand. Okay, so he has a huge grudge against Wu TuNan and everyone in the lineage, so much so that he wrote some criticizing article and published in the Wudang magazine in China, which upset some of the Wu TuNan's people. One in particular is a guy called Yu Zhijun from Beijing, and Yu Zhijun basically wrote a counter article in the same magazine, and it kind of got Yan Ziyuan's attention. And in, I think it was 2001, near Chinese New Year, this Yan Ziyuan came to Beijing and went to challenge this Yu Zhijun, trying to settle their dispute, saying they're gonna each represent Wu TuNan and Ma Yueliang, and then settle the age-long grudge once and for all. Now, naturally, afterwards, Yan Ziyuan published an article claiming that he won against Yu Zhijun. However, the interesting thing here is that they were not the only ones at the scene at the time. Okay, for some reason, this Yan Ziyuan first went to Wei Gongcun and visited someone called Zhang Xinbin. For those of you that don't know, he is my previous Tongbei teacher, right? And he wanted Zhang Xinbin to go with him to go to Yu Zhijun's house to challenge him. And Zhang Xinbin also brought another friend. I think his surname is Liu something, I can't remember his name, who's an Yichuan practitioner. I think is from Li Jianyu's lineage. So all three of them went together to Yu Zhijun's house. So basically, according to this Yichuan guy, Liu Mao something, I can't remember his name. According to him, as well as according to Zhang Xinbin, when Yan Ziyuan and this Yu Zhijun, touch hand, they want to settle the dispute on push hand, right? When they touch hand, first round, Yu Zhijun kind of stepped back, and he lost the first round. And the second round, Yan Ziyuan actually fell back and bumped into furniture, broke some glasses, and actually cut either his ear or his face close to the ear. So by the witnesses, interpretation, they each lost a round, but Yan Ziyuan's loss is actually more severe. Okay, and after that, then the Yichuan guy stepped in and supposedly pushed Yu Zhijun onto a bed. Again, it kind of shows you they're a little bit barbaric. And afterwards, when they left the house, then this Yichuan guy Liu had an argument with Yan Ziyuan, and they almost had a fight outside, according to Zhang Xinbin. So my point is that it really doesn't matter what kind of drama or grudge that you guys have, or the lineages of Wu TuNan, Ma Yueliang, whatever. Right? What really matters is how good are you today. What are you capable of doing? For example, this Yan Ziyuan guy, he's really hot-headed and determined to criticize Wu TuNan's lineage and challenge anyone from the lineage. But what if I step out today and say I represent Wu TuNan? I'm gonna kick his ass most likely. Okay, I mean I've never met him, but I know what kind of skill Yu Zhijun has, and if Yu Zhijun is almost like a semi-draw and slightly winning versus him, I'll totally kick his ass. And obviously also I know Zhang Xinbin's capability, and Zhang Xinbin said this guy is pretty bad. He doesn't think he's good at all. So my point is, even though he spent all this time writing articles, criticizing Wu TuNan, publishing in magazines, in books, on the internet, in forums, if one day I meet him and I kick his ass, then what? Does that mean all the things he say is fake? I mean, it's kind of stupid that people in today's world spend so much time writing trash and attacking other lineages rather than, trying hard and prove that they are the better lineage by action. So that's why I'm not interested in this whole drama between Wu TuNan and Ma Yueliang, and I'm not interested in representing Wu TuNan because like I said, even my own master don't think he should represent Wu TuNan because he actually didn't learn a lot from Wu TuNan's lineage. Right? Most of our Taichi come from Shiming, which I will discuss in a later episode. So I'm not going to represent Wu TuNan, but the point is, if I want to, I could because I have the lineage, right? Even though I know that we didn't get much from him, but I could claim his lineage, and I could kick this Yan Ziyuan's ass, and and it's stupid that is what people are resorting to in these days, which is why I've been saying, these dramas is really not interesting, right? I mean, you can kind of check them out like a gossip magazine, like paparazzi stuff, and do it for laughs, but don't spend too much time and don't get caught up in it. Rather focus in training and prove your lineage's worth by what you can do, not by writing paragraphs and essays. Alright, so now the last rumor that I'm gonna dispel is basically Yiquan people in China has, or in Beijing at least, have a nickname called Liu Mang Quan. Liu Mang either means hooligan or thug, right? So Liu Mang Quan means hooligan fist or hooligan style or thug style. Now the reason for that is because Yiquan guys, especially in the early 50s all the way up to the late 80s, right? They all act like hooligans. They wear a shirt that's unbuttoned and with nothing inside, so they have like a naked chest and like unbuttoned shirt, and like short or like baggy trousers, and they walk like this. So they all act like hooligans, and they usually go around all the parks in Beijing and challenge people and beat people up and force them out of their own training location. So a lot of people didn't like the Yiquan guys, and they all come in like a whole group, and they they crowd you, and they stand like all funny and stuff. And being involved in the Yiquan crowd, I have to concur that even till today, that hooliganism or the thugness is still found in a lot of the members there. Again, that's not to say that the style is bad. It's just the culture within the style is not something I personally enjoy. Now the rumor is that a lot of people claim that Wu TuNan was the one who first coined the name thug, Liu Mang Quan, right, the thug style or hooligan style, after Yiquan guys came to his training location, which is the Beijing Planetarium, and made trouble. And after that, he told everyone, those are like, they're doing thug first, they're not doing real Chinese martial art. Now, this myth is completely false. And I can say that for certainty because while my master was a student under Wu TuNan actually one day gave him a task to go and fetch a book that he has borrowed to Yao Zongxun. Right? For those of you who don't know, Yao Zongxun is basically one of the most important Yiquan figure in Beijing, a disciple of his founder Wang Xiangzhai, and the one where Wang Xiangzhai gave him the name to be his successor. So Yao Zongxun is one of the most important Yiquan figure in Beijing and in Yiquan in general. Okay, so Wu TuNan was actually a friend with Yao Zongxun, and my master was sent by Wu TuNan to Yao Zongxun's house to pick up a book that Wu TuNan borrowed that lent to Yao Zongxun. And my master says that's the first time he actually met Yao Zhongxun in person. And he also said, Yao Zhongxun was actually a very friendly and nice guy. But that's maybe for another episode. So that means that Wu TuNan actually in a very good relationship with Yao Zhongxun, and therefore the Yiquan guys could not have come to the planetarium to mess up his training location, because Yao Zhongxun, being the head of the Yiquan group at the time, would not have allowed it. Okay, and obviously Wu TuNan would also not have been able to call Yiquan Liu Mang Quan or hooligan style, because he's actually a very good friend with Yao Zhongxun. Okay, again, it's nothing to do with training, but like I said, right, we're doing fact or fiction on martial art drama and rumors and stories. So from that end, I think this is also an interesting thing to remember, right? That you don't believe in all the rumors you hear. A lot of them actually has no base. People just make these up, especially in the modern day, in today, right, where you can just write stuff on the internet. Back then, when you write a book, you at least need to get a publisher, and then it was like medical or lawyer or accounting. You kind of need to have people who could peer review it, authorities. For martial art, back then you also kind of need authority, although they're not real authorities in martial art per se, but people have to peer review it and have to check, right? But in today's world, it's different. Some random guy can go onto a forum and just say, Wu TuNan says this and that, and then people just believe it and be passed down. Eventually, it'll become the truth according to a large population of the internet users, which is why there are far more rumors today than there was back in the the 70s and the 80s. So moral story: don't believe in everything you hear. Right, a lot of them are actually fake and just made up, like the ones that we talk about today. So I hope you guys are enjoying the series, and I hope this episode today has been interesting for you guys, even though I know Wu TuNan is not a very influential figure in the West, but I think it's also interesting to hear some lesser known masters and how part of their stories in China. So if you've got any suggestions and comments, you can want to leave them in a comment below, and I'll definitely get back to you, for all the constructive comments and suggestions, and even disagreement, right? If you're constructive, I'll definitely get back to you. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can get the latest videos as soon as I post them. And if you want, please support me on Patreon. That will help me greatly and allow me to make more videos in the future on a more timely basis and better quality as well. And like I've said before, any other topics that you'd like to discuss, you can welcome to leave them there. I might not get to them immediately because I do have a plan for the near future, but I'll definitely keep them in mind. The ones that I can make, I'll definitely keep them in mind and make a schedule for it. The ones I can't make, for example, people I have absolutely no idea of, so I'm not going to make them because I'll just make a fool out of myself, and probably I'm going to be telling rumors as well, and I don't want that. And lastly, everyone still hope you guys will stay safe, stay social distance, keep yourself safe. And if you got nothing to do, do training, right? That's always beneficial, right? This is actually the perfect time to improve on your martial arts skill rather than let it waste away. And if you're daily training every day, then life wouldn't feel so long and miserable and repetitive, right? You actually try to get yourself a goal, a progression, right? Where you want to be at the end of this lockdown in terms of training, and then your life will be more exciting and you have more motivation every day rather than repeating the same lazy cycle every day, and then you tend to kind of lose focus on life. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching the TriEssence martial art channel.